and they what they did was they went in the race to Alaska, and for those of you who don't know what that is, that's a completely crazy race from Port Townsend to Ketchikan. You're not allowed to take an engine, and you're not allowed to get outside help. You just go, and they went and they made it. And at the time, and maybe they still are, they're the youngest team to ever have done it.
There's a younger team now than we were at the time.
Well, it's very impressive in any case. And then after that, they started talking about going around the world, and I didn't know what to believe, but here we are. So that's all I have to say about Cianan and Callum.
So yeah, we started sailing here, like we said. I actually remember sitting right in that corner on my first day of sailing lessons, and yeah, then going down to the dock right there and taking out at 420 and sailing around the harbor. So yeah, we did that a couple of years, like Greg said, and became instructors. And there, as you can see, it didn't always go well, but that's when we started trapezing. So yeah, it had some wet days. First regatta was 2015 in Maple Bay. That was with Greg as our coach. And I think we got second in that regatta. So that kind of got us going, and then race team here stopped for the winter, and we wanted to keep going, so we joined Royal Victoria. And we raced, I did a lot of racing there, kind of training with them, but racing under the Saltspring flag. And we did nationals, provincials, BC games, BC circuit. We got second on BC circuit. And yeah, then finished that, and we were getting too heavy for 420 at that point, so we bought a 49er. It's a really fast boat, fun boat, but all the races are in Europe, so we ended up getting rid of that and getting into keelboat racing. And we did a lot of racing around here. Big one is kind of funny story. Douglas actually contacted us sort of by accident. He got the wrong mailing list. I'd signed up for the Swiftsure mailing list, the crew list, and he sent us an email wondering if we wanted to do Van Isle 360, which of course we said yes. So, yeah, I did Van Isle 360, and then yeah, we bought the my old boss. I was working at Leach and McBride at the time, so I bought the old company boat for $2,000, and yeah, sailed up to Alaska, and yeah, it's a pretty good race. And after that, we were feeling fairly confident in our abilities. Yeah. We got up to Alaska, and we felt like we were almost in the Arctic at that point. No, like you can see, we're nowhere near the Arctic. We're like the same level as Prince George, pretty much. But that inspired our idea to do Northwest Passage. And yeah, so we finished that race. We're trying to figure out what to do next. And with COVID coming along, Northwest Passage was closed to the Inuit communities that didn't want anyone coming in, as did the South Pacific. But the South Pacific opened up before Northwest Passage, so that made our decision to sail that way. Yeah, so that was 2022, and we started looking for a boat. We were looking at we had a budget of around $12,000, and we wanted a full keel, something super solid, something pretty small, around 35 feet. And after about 6 months, we found this one, which is a Hunter Vogel 30, which is actually built in Vancouver. And it's very, very solid, 1970 boat, so solid fiberglass. And it came with a wind vane self-steering and almost all the paper charts that we needed, which is actually worth a lot of money. But it did need a lot of work. So yeah, that's my dad volunteering, helping us with repairs. But yeah, I was working at Thrifty's at that time, so every day after work I'd go down to the boat and work on that. And yeah, Callum was working at Leitrim McBride, so he started making all new sails in his time off. Yeah, which saved us a lot of money. And then here's some of the inside work. We had to redo all the plywood, new windows, a whole bunch of other stuff that we had to do in there. So I guess spring of 2022, we were pretty much ready to go. We had the boat all set, and New Zealand still hadn't opened at that point, but we were hopeful that if we left, they would be open by the time we got there, which did work out, so that was very good. But yeah, here's us, that's Callum with all of our supplies of food. We have no refrigeration on board, so it's all canned beans and dried goods. We had like 400 cans and I don't know how much dried goods. And then we had 400 liters of water and 50 liters of diesel on board, which was enough to get us through. So, with our route, we were planning on sailing down along the coast almost to Mexico and then heading offshore to avoid the Pacific High. But it was kind of a strange year, and we ended up actually being able to sail almost straight to Hawaii. So that took us 3 weeks, which is actually pretty close to what the race boats had done it in just before we did it.
Wow.
But yeah, we had our 23rd birthday crossing over. On that crossing, we have a diesel stove that we do all the cooking on, and the pump on it stopped working. We didn't have a backup pump, and so we had no stove, and we had to eat all our beans cold. And they're not like baked beans or anything, they're just like canned beans. It was not very good. Yeah, so I was keen, relaxing in the bow. And yeah, coming out of the Strait of Juan de Fuca, we accidentally sailed through the U.S. military testing zone. So we got buzzed by an Air Force plane and told to get out of there. But some excitement. And yeah, so crossing over was fairly rough later on. We had quite a lot of wind, and our mast compression post wasn't attached at the top. So with all the waves and the impact, it started to shift forward. And we weren't quite sure, like we didn't have much of a way to stop it. So we weren't quite sure when it was just going to tip over and our mast was going to come through the deck, but we made it to Hawaii. Yeah, so we sailed basically right through the Pacific Gyre, which is the Pacific Garbage Patch. And our mother is an artist, and she wanted a piece of garbage. So it was very calm. We left our sails up and we saw this piece of garbage floating by. So I jumped in the water and swam over to it. It was probably about 200-300 feet away from the boat. And the wind started to pick up, and the boat started to sail off. So I ditched the garbage pretty quick and went swimming after the boat, but by the time Callum got turned around, it was almost out of sight. And,
Oh my God.
that was a bit alarming. We were much more careful in our swimming. So this is where we made it to Hawaii. And we got to hike up the volcano actually very shortly before it erupted again. And in Hawaii, we had a really hard time finding fresh water. So we ended up filling up all of our water jugs from a tap we found on the side of a public toilet. And as it turned out later, it was not the best water. And a friend, while we were there, a friend Ursi, arrived and she joined us for the rest of the leg to New Zealand. And we fixed our compression post as well. Leaving Hawaii was very rough weather. We had short, steep waves, upwind, and most of us were pretty seasick. and the heat was very, very intense. So this is me sewing up a shade cloth for the boat. We don't have any dodger or any sort of canvas on the boat, so when you're out on deck, you're just fully exposed. Wow, things are getting pretty rough. Our water was starting to come alive, and it had these big white slimy blobs in it that were very challenging to get down. Yeah, we were definitely feeling it, and we arrived in Kiribati, and when we checked before we left, it was supposed to be fully open at that point with COVID. But we arrived in, we anchored off the beach and radioed them up, and they wouldn't let us in, so we just spent the day anchored at the beach and then kept going. The ITCZ, the Intertropical Convergence Zone, was very, very wide that year. We met another boat that had to turn back, which was part of the reason we actually changed our course to go to Fiji instead of originally going to French Polynesia. But this was crossing the equator in the ITCZ, and it's tradition that you shave your head and sacrifice it to Neptune. And it being three brothers, we ended up with some interesting haircuts. There's our, that's what we looked like after the experience. And then the salt sores on the boat were quite painful. Yes, then we got to Fiji. It had been a 31-day crossing at that point, since we weren't allowed into Kiribati. And it was kind of funny, the customs agents, they came out to the boat, and they weren't interested in clearing us in at all. They just wanted to hear about our trip. we had a tub of honey that we'd completely forgotten about. It was just sitting out on a shelf right in front of them. They didn't even talk about it. Yeah, that was pretty good. And yeah, just mango. Fiji is really nice. We came into Sabu Sabu, and there's mango trees lining all the streets, and they're ripe when we went through. So yeah, we spent a little bit there, then we went explored around the southern islands. It's all coconut trees. Yeah, so here's the next slide. Here's our route around. We came into Sabu Sabu, came over to Kimbombo Islets, and we had water in our fuel, so our engine stopped working right as we were surfing across a reef. It was 6 feet deep, and the engine died. So Cianan ran down into the engine bay, and he was trying to get it running as fast as he could before we ran aground. And yeah, we sailed down around the Southern Lao group. These had all been closed until 2019 to everyone. So we were one of the first cruisers to get down there, legally anyway. And then yeah, went over and cleared out in Atoko. But yeah, so I guess I'll skip ahead there a bit. So there's the coconuts we're eating. Bought a cheap machete. This was a kind of interesting island in Fiji. So we anchored right in the middle of the reef, and there's this shipwreck here. And we were anchored there for a couple of days, and every night we'd hear an engine going by our boat. And it really seemed like it was haunted. We were trying to figure it out for a long time. And the last day we found it was just a fisherman. For some reason he'd go out every night and go fishing. Found a broken surfboard. Didn't work very well, but at least we had the hard hat for safety. And here, this is an underwater cave, sort of. It's a tunnel. We were snorkeling and found this underwater tunnel. So we dove into it, and it was about 6 feet down, 6 feet in. And you could swim along, and it was about 30 feet, and we dove down again, and it came out into this massive cavern, which was a big hill, and the inside is just all hollowed out.
Wow.
So yeah, it's an exciting place. So yeah, this is us. We were well into cyclone season at this point, so we figured it was time to get out of Fiji and head for New Zealand. So this is us heading out. We had perfect weather, nice spinnaker run. And yeah, it wasn't to last. It was 1,100 miles to New Zealand, and we got pretty close, and then we got hit by a big storm. It was about 45 plus knots, large swells on the beam, so it was pretty uncomfortable. And right as it hit, our propeller shaft pulled out of the coupling, and it came back and jammed our rudder hard over. So it was just this big storm coming, and we could just do circles. So yeah, we managed to crawl in there with some vice grips and a hammer and beat it back into the coupler. But yeah, we had so much water coming over the deck that it was all coming down through the hatches and through the air vents. So we rigged this tarp up over one of the bunks to try to keep some of the water out of it while we were sleeping. So yeah, we as we came into New Zealand, we were talking to the customs people there, and they were asking us if we'd seen this catamaran that left Fiji at the same time as us, and they just disappeared. But we found out later that they'd been dismasted. Everyone was okay on it. And we rented a mooring there, and we left the boat, and then we took the train down south to the South Island of New Zealand. So then we got to New Zealand, and we've always liked doing a lot of hiking, and there's this trail that runs the length of New Zealand, the Te Araroa. So we figured we had a couple months, we'd go hike the length of the South Island of it. So that's a 1,400 kilometer trail. It took us about 2 months, and we'd just been sitting on a boat for the last I think it was 5 months at that point. So we're not in great shape to start. So yeah, that was pretty good. But we got in shape fast. And while we were about halfway through the trail, a cyclone hit North Island of New Zealand. We had perfect weather, like you can see down here. Yeah, that one. But yeah, it was really bad in North Island, washed out a bunch of bridges, and in the harbor we were in, 5 of the boats sank on their moorings, and there was another 10 or so washed ashore. Luckily our boat was fine, so that was quite good. Then we finished that, flew over to Australia. Our parents had a truck in Sydney, and they needed to get it to Perth, so we drove it across Australia for them through the Great Central Road. It's a pretty fun track, but yeah, it's a challenge. And at that point, we were ready to make some money, so flew home and work in forestry and silviculture, so we're doing surveys. So that can make enough money in 3 months to fund a year of sailing for us. Which is, I guess, about $40,000 for $30,000 a year that we're spending. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm back in New Zealand, ready to cross the Tasman Sea. We're getting a lot of warnings from the locals. They're saying it's bad to do it that time of year. One of them had been rolled and had to get rescued by a container ship. And when we left the harbor, there was a small craft warning, so they're saying don't go out, but can't listen to those too often. So that was okay. It wasn't too rough. We got to Australia and are ready to come into port, and our transmission failed. So we ended up getting towed into Cairns. So yeah, we had a lot of work to do in Cairns. Our wind turbine had stopped working, so that's Callum taking it apart to try to fix it. And we had to replace our solar panel, and our stove. We had a little bike pump we were using to pump up the pressure in it. So we put a electric air pump in there, which was a big improvement, and our head sail had been pretty worn out, so we got that fixed too. Had a sail loft there. But yeah, we got that all fixed, and then we were cruising up the Great Barrier Reef, Once again, we were very much in cyclone season, so we had the entire Great Barrier Reef fully to ourselves. I think we saw one other boat the whole time we were there. It was very, very nice. Yeah, so in Northern Australia, it was getting really hot at this point. It's in the abandoned settlement in it's kind of middle of Northern Australia. It was so hot at this point. In our cab we have a thermometer, it goes up to 50 degrees, and it was topped out. Like it was over 50 degrees Celsius in the cabs, in the cabin. And we were hot bunking at that point, so we both share a bunk and we're on watches, so we go back and forth. And one of us would get up, and the other would go in the bunk, and there's so much sweat that it would bubble up. You feel it bubbling up around you. Yeah. So that was that. Yeah, I got to Darwin, and getting ready to cross the Indian Ocean. We had to increase our water capacity because it was going to be 6,000 miles with one stop in Cocos Keeling. But we weren't sure if we could refill on water there because it's such a small island. So we increased our water capacity and we increased our fuel capacity to 150 liters because yeah, it was going to be very calm in the cyclone season. That's the effect. It's either a cyclone or there's no wind. Yeah, that was across this, the start of the passage. A lot of dolphins.
Oh yeah, cool dolphins.
And then, as you can see, no wind. It's the calmest I've ever seen an ocean. This was probably 1,000 miles offshore, and it felt like you're at a dock. It was so calm and no sound, like the sails weren't even flapping, or there was just nothing. So we were on our way, and we saw this little tiny island marked on the chart. So we decided to stop in there. It's Ashmore Reef. It is actually barely an island. It's just like a little beach, basically out in the middle of the ocean. And an Australian Border Force boat showed up there at the same time as us, and they gave us all this food. Really nice. We were super hot at that point, and they had put it all in the fridge for us, so it was nice and cool. But yeah, bananas are known to be very bad luck on boats, and that proved to be true in the future. So this is on Ashmore Reef. It is basically all you see there is just a sandy beach. But yeah, that's Callum looking at some turtle tracks, giant turtle tracks going up the beach. And it's a bird sanctuary, so there's just thousands and thousands of seabirds all around it. So yeah, this is our route. So this is Darwin, Ashmore Reef, somewhere right around there. And then that's Cocos Keeling over there. And you can see later on, we were right in the heart of cyclone season, and we did that last dot is where we got hit by a cyclone.
Red is a lot of wind.
So yeah, we had really good weather leaving Ashmore Reef. It was like 15 knots on the beam. We were probably doing about 5 knots under sail. But yeah, it wasn't to last. Well, the weather was okay, but our bilge pump failed, our electric bilge pump, and shortly after that, our stuffing box started leaking really badly. So we were hand pumping out every half hour, or the water would come up above the floorboards. And after a couple of days of that, we did figure out a fix. We stuffed the whole stuffing box full of grease, and that sealed it up temporarily. Yeah, so then we made it to Cocos Keeling, which is a tiny little island, very small population, and very remote. But it's a really nice place. It's supposed to, they say it's one of the nicest beaches in Australia, which Australia has some beaches to contend there, so it's saying something. And it's a challenging place to get into. This is the passage you have to take into the reef, and it's only about 5 feet deep. So yeah, and all the charts are 200 meters off. As we found out, but we didn't run aground. So then we left Ashmore Reef, and this was a long crossing over to South Africa, so we had to keep ourselves entertained. So yeah, there's me getting my hair cut. That was Cianan's special design. We were getting a little sick of canned beans, so we had some flying fish as an extra snack.
Wow.
And here we are. This is Cyclone Bilal, and we saw it coming on the chart, on the weather mapping for quite a while, but we're so slow. We tried to sail north, it would turn north. We sailed south, it turned south. So we eventually decided there's nothing for it. We're just going to go through it, and we're going to use the clockwise rotation of the cyclone to slingshot us out towards South Africa. And yeah, it worked. It was a very devastating cyclone. It caused 6 deaths in Mauritius and $275 million in damage. But for us, we had about 70 knots of wind and 30+ foot waves for a couple days. So yeah, when we left, this is approaching South Africa now. So when we were clearing out of Australia, the customs person was from South Africa, and she told us, do not go swimming in South Africa because of all the sharks. But we were coming into South Africa and a fishing net had tangled around our propeller. So we kind of flipped a coin to see who would jump over the side. I ended up going in and cut the net off, and that all worked out. Luckily there were no sharks. So yeah, this is in Richards Bay, which was our first stop in South Africa. We rented a car and were able to go to the Umfolozi Game Reserve where we saw lots and lots of wildlife. When we were there, all the locals told us to be very careful with our next leg because we have the Ugalis current that runs north at about 2 to 5 knots, or south, it runs south at 2 to 5 knots, and the prevailing wind is from the south, so wind against current doesn't make for fun times. But we'd heard that so many times from other people, we decided that we wouldn't listen to that. We went for it. And it was 5 days of very, very strong headwinds and very, very big, steep breaking waves. I think they were up to around over 40 feet. And at the same time, all the shipping had been diverted around South Africa. So there was a lot of ships to try to avoid. So we were getting close to Simonstown. We were out of the worst of the weather, and it was nighttime. And I just went down below. I was on watch. I went down below to get some water. And I come back up, and there's this cargo boat just looming over us, like almost fully blotting out the sky. And they had no nav lights and no AIS on. So I'm not sure what was going on there, but I managed to jibe us around just in time and avoided them by like maybe 100 meters at most. And that's a sketch I did of them. I didn't get any
Good
photos.
sketch.
So this is Simonstown. It's a town that's overrun with penguins. You can see there's one over in the corner there. But yeah, we spent about maybe 2 weeks there waiting for a weather window around the Cape of Good Hope, which is one of the 3 stormy capes. And we figured this time we would actually wait for a weather window. Yeah, so there we are in front of the Cape of Good Hope in some nice weather this time. So then we got around the Cape of Good Hope and came into Cape Town. And Cape Town is a really busy port, so we had to call in port control and get permission to enter. And we just finished doing that, and the wind picked up to 55 knots and blew us straight back out of the harbor. We ended up spending the night just tacking back and forth until it died off, and then we could enter. And in Cape Town, we met 2 Canadian boats actually. One was Picton Castle, based out of Nova Scotia, and the other was Starfire, which is from Saltspring.
Wow.
You made it back before they did.
Yeah,
We're still in New Zealand.
nice. Yeah, so we had dinner with them, and it was nice to see another Canadian boat. They actually gave us a new Canadian flag because ours was pretty rough at that point. And from there we went up to Namibia, and we rented a car in Namibia, unfortunately 2-wheel drive, and drove it off into the desert. And first thing we did, sank it up to the chassis in sand. So we had to go find some locals, and we found enough people we could pick up the car and carry it back onto the road. Yeah, so we sailed up the coast. Namibia is a very challenging place to sail. It's got a lot of fog and shifting sand dunes, so the charts are never accurate and the coastline's always changing. Yeah, so we anchored there under the sand dunes and took our dinghy ashore in thick fog, so we couldn't see the shore and couldn't see the waves. And we ended up rolling the dinghy in the waves and hydro-locked the engine. So we went ashore, tried to get the spark plug out, but we didn't have any tools with us. And that didn't work. And we lost our paddle when we rolled it. We were about a mile from the boat, and ended up paddling back with our Crocs. Yeah.
Are you going to do an ad for Crocs?
Yeah, sponsor us, yeah. So yeah, it's a very notorious coast for shipwrecks along there. Oh yeah, and that's all seals, big seal colonies. So you can smell them from like 10 miles off. But yeah, so then in Namibia, we reloaded on all our supplies of canned goods. You could buy them really cheap there, so bought as many as we could, which turned out to have repercussions later on. And also we met Walter, who owns a game farm, and it was very strange. He had sailed from Namibia to South America with Ralph Steenstra, who was one of my customers at Leach McBride. Very strange. So yeah, we were in Namibia and we had some decisions to make. We were running very low on money at this point, but our options were we could either go down around the Cape Horn, which we really wanted to do, but it would have been upwind the whole way, going the wrong way around the Horn at the wrong time of year. Our second option was through Panama, but we had no money at all at that point. We had a credit card with a limit of $2,000, and that was it. So that left our third option, which was up north through the Arctic and through the Northwest Passage So, yeah, that was really an easy choice, and it was something that we always really wanted to do. So, that's what we did. So we headed off for our first stop, which was St. Helena Island.
Long way.
Can I suggest this is a good time to take a break now? This is just amazing. Mesmerized here and Betty here. So, we'll take a bit of time for Q&A now, and there's snacks happening back in the counter here. And, maybe, is there a question from the floor first, and then I'll see if somebody's waving at me from Zoom.
I have a quick question. Did you fish? Because it didn't look like you fished. You did fish?
Yeah, we, at first it took us a while to figure out how to catch fish offshore, but around this time was when we started getting pretty good at fishing.
So you didn't just have beans, you got to eat fish.
Sometimes, yeah.
And also, water collection, were you collecting it, rainwater and stuff in the sails?
Yeah, we had a catcher I'd made out of a old spinnaker, and we rigged it up under the boom so all the water off the sails are collecting that, and we could refill, but yeah, we didn't get a huge amount through it.
So you'd had, by this point, you'd had a few significant setbacks. Did you ever, during those setbacks, think, this is not what I want to do, I want to go back home?
Maybe during the setbacks, but then you get through it and you still got a long way to go, so you have a long time to forget before you can.
What do you think of your choice of boat? If you were doing the trip again, would you choose the same type of boat?
I would say definitely, yeah. Yeah, very solid boat. It's possible I would go slightly bigger, but that also has a downside, so I'm pretty happy with our one.
And was that a 35 footer?
30 foot,
30 foot.
yeah. Yeah.
What was it, that first setback you had with the mast? What was that on the top of the mast that you had to fix?
Was the base of, under the mast, there's a compression post that holds the deck up, and the compression post was starting to shift. So if that had shifted too much more, the mast would have come down through the deck.
Like in the cabin underneath?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Cool.
You had a number of drone shots there. Did you start the trip with a drone, or did you learn how to use it en route, or what?
We started with a drone, and then we crashed it in Fiji. But then we got another one, I guess when we left New Zealand. So.
You still have it?
We have another. We have a different one now. We went through a couple.
It was really neat to see those aerial shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so impressed by the detail that you remember or you're telling us. It's so interesting. I'm just curious to know if you kept a handwritten or a digital log the whole time?
Yeah, we have a website, and that has all of our.
But during the trip, were you kind of logging it daily or frequently so that you could capture all of your adventures?
Yeah, up until I guess it was Australia, we were just like writing out our own personal journal essentially. And then when we got to Australia, we started like properly doing trip reports that we put on our website whenever we got Wi-Fi.
It was really neat for me personally. Every once in a while, Greg would put a notice that Wendy would circulate it to take a look at your website. It was like so inspiring to see that, like first-hand account, like from that morning or whatever. Yeah, it was really cool.
How did you manage the decision-making? Because it would seem that the boat has two captains.
Most of it was pretty much, well, we just talk about it and decide, but we were pretty aligned in what we wanted to do. That was mostly pretty easy, and most of the time it kind of felt like the decisions decided themselves.
With a little coin tossing.
Yeah.
how about communications? You mentioned you'd upload to the website when you had Wi-Fi, so did you have any kind of satellite stuff or?
We had a Iridium Go, so we could send and receive emails and download weather charts with it. But to send an email would take about 2 hours to send.
Yeah.
So it was slow.
Okay, should be, any other questions, or should we take a little break now?
I got one question.
Oh.
So when you're in the midst of a cyclone or other storm, how did you guys manage, like, tell us about some of the experiences you had getting through these events in terms of, you know, was one person sleeping, was one person on the helmet? How did you manage it?
We'd pretty much all the time we'd have one of us sleeping, one of us up. And for a lot of it, like psychologically, you're so sleep deprived that you can't really think about it. So that part was easy. And yeah, we just try and, if we saw something coming, try and put our storm jib up and triple reef our main pretty early.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Okay,
just-
now let's take 10. I'll give you a shout.
Got the 30 foot already. Just a longer keel. I stuck They ran into the Casper. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's funny when that our daughter ran into it. It was kind of strange when she was at University of Calgary. They were talking about getting another. Excuse me. They were renting out a basement suite or something like that. It seemed like nice people every day. Got to talk. Say like, yeah, so where are you from? Oh, I'm from Vancouver. Well, actually, not really Vancouver, you know. Yeah, a couple more iterations of the question, and it turns out this guy was in Charlotte's class. They graduated together.
The bus stop, a bus shelter, for a bus. And this woman looked at me and instantly didn't speak English quite well. So she said something to me, a ticket, and I said, no, can I use money? And then you did tax, and I'll help you. And then she said, where are you from? And then I said, Saltspring Island. She said, I have a cousin from Saltspring Island. You know him, and I'm going to, you know, it was first people. And I don't want to this is bizarre. I love it. By the way,
It is a mutual phenomenon. it's got, I'm glad it's a plan. Let's hope it carries out.
I know the weather, yeah.
You know, I was just thinking of that time. It was, I think, the Roy. Nobody could go out.
Yes, I remember that. I remember
What was that? Sometimes you guys got out with us. I think it might have been
bureaucracy.
I don't remember going out. I think we decided that well. There was a time.
Yes, oh, yes, there was. I thought, yeah, we did mention it. I know it's straightforward.
Oh, okay.
One is good. I think one time after Rob and I went out to do that, and they went up so cold, whatever.
No response. Oh, yeah, we'll look at it next week.
We can always hope.
Exactly.
Hope for the best.
Oh, just delay. No, it's not fun. Wrong question. But yes. James Street Village, personal contact. So I think we have to go tomorrow and take all three here. Yeah. That's where you can walk away. Some of these online, I almost did it myself, but I thought, well,
Do I have
not the way, eh? Yeah, I know my mom all sorted, and I was starting mine. I did mine like a month and a half ago, where I did my first pass through the
Sailed away on a pilot.
I love the way they started.
I'm also support for that. She's lucky to have but I managed to adapt to having that and the health pathway. I mean, I've been in some rough and then I couldn't do it with her. So fast, her photo and her video. So I started my business.
My other sister is on the ground. She doesn't kind of turns up and takes refuge. And we're trying to train her to kind of like walk around and see if we can march to her arm. That kind of thing. She's like truly on the love boat entertainer. Sunshine and joy. Which is great. It's great. Yeah, but then we have this communication plan and our mom does this.
We want to have
Well, she does. She says, sure, okay, and then when the cleaner will come, she'll like,
oh my God.
it's like that. So it's like, you gotta help us to help you.
Oh yeah,
We need this to know you're okay. So that we just got to move on. Really good. Because it's experiment.
Oh, that's what I turn over. Setting it up.
Let's talk to her.
When we were before the
Well, I was there for 3 weeks in the summer, so I set up a system. And then my on the ground is to look at the next almost like my other system that came across becoming my nephew. I said, hey, this is on this bill and all. I'm doing it all. So I got my interbank account, my brother, started business, and so on and on. She's got a financial planner, but then you gotta like do like phone calls, and I get something to do.
So inspiring,
Not care about cycling.
Are you gonna buy their boat? They want to sell it. It's well trained, eh? Yeah. Already got around the world. Probably has all the maps still. So interesting, eh? Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. Keep the wind direction. 70 miles an hour. Oh, they weren't used to take the jet. That's a lot of it. Yeah, and nothing stopped them. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, Cianan Foundation.
sometimes you've got to go back.
Oh, yeah. Not just beans and sails. Yeah, with somebody else's sweat. Love that story. Oh wow, yeah.
Okay, let's have a seat, we'll carry on. We're gonna have a seat.
We spent time on site.
His son was on the city office.
I've watched a number of YouTube videos and all of
Okay, so yeah, this was just leaving Namibia and we're heading to St. Helena. And we made the decision to do the Northwest Passage. So it was about 1,000 miles crossing to St. Helena, so it's fairly short. And this is St. Helena. The diversity is extreme there. Like there's dense jungle to volcanic rock to cloud forests, and it's a tiny little island. It's half the size of Saltspring, both landmass and population. Yeah, we spent a little while there. This is actually the island that Napoleon was exiled to and eventually died at. This is Jonathan. He lives on St. Helena. He's the world's oldest living land animal. He's like 195 or something at this point. So this is the, up until, I think it was 2019, I can't remember for sure, but it's very recently, the only way to get to St. Helena was by a boat. They didn't have an airport. And their ferry was, strangely enough, an old BC ferry that was used to run from Vancouver up to Haida Gwaii. So that was a bit of a strange thing when we found that out.
Maybe we could buy it back.
And there's one in Fiji as well.
Oh yeah, you get all over the place. Yeah, next slide. So, in St. Helena, there's no real harbor. It's a roadstead anchorage, and there's no beaches. It's all rocky cliffs.
Wow.
So we anchored off in about 50 feet of water, and the only way to get in is to take a little water taxi that brings you into the dock. It's just a concrete pier, and they drop you off there, but the waves are breaking against the pier, so they like nose in, you jump off, the water taxi goes back out, and then they anchor outside. So yeah, this was the water taxi driver who gave us this fish that he just caught, which was very nice. Fresh food was very limited on St. Helena. Oh yeah, and he actually took us on a little tour around in his water taxi to look at the whale sharks there. But yeah, we ended up buying some meat in St. Helena, and we were making sandwiches. We were getting quite hungry. We got about halfway through eating the sandwiches, and we realized that the meat was full of maggots. Oh.
God.
We figured it was extra protein and couldn't get it off.
Oh my God.
So our next leg from St. Helena was going to be by far the longest. So we had to do some serious calculations on if we would make it and what rations we'd need to make it. So these are our various route options and distances and time estimates. And the things that are in blue are, we figured, were possible with a safe reserve at 6 liters a day of water. And in red, that was if we were using 8 liters a day. So we ended up going with the top one, which was not possible according to our calculations, but we did have we did have an extra 40 liters in case things went badly.
So sorry, is that St. Helena non-stop to Halifax?
Yeah, so 6,000 nautical miles and took us 54 days, I believe. Oh, and when we were in St. Helena, you can buy these little canned meat pies. So we bought 6 of them, and we had one for every 1,000 miles we sailed. So yeah, we left St. Helena, and our sails had about 30,000 miles on them at that point, so they're getting pretty rough. So yeah, there we are, fixing our sails. We'd actually worn through 2 sets of hanks. Like we just worn them right through on the forestay at that point. Yeah, so that was such a long crossing. The days sort of all start to blend together, and you really lose your perception of time. And with just the 2 of us on board and almost no outside communication, we probably went through every conversation topic we could think of about 50 times. And then we ran out of stuff to talk about and probably spent a couple weeks, probably didn't say anything for that time. So yeah. Oh yeah, and that's another interesting thing with that. If you don't talk for that long, we got back to Canada and realized we actually almost forgotten how to talk. We'd forget words and good things. Yeah, it was interesting. So here, this is approaching the Gulf of Guinea, and we just saw this tanker, and we found out 2 days later they'd been taken over by pirates, and they hijacked the boat. I guess they tried to take it hostage, but it wasn't working for them, so they ended up just sabotaging it and leaving. So that was about 100 miles from our position. Which is, I guess our boat was rough enough, we weren't much of a target, but it's a little unnerving because they could have been to where we were in under 4 hours probably. They go pretty quick. So we got to Bermuda, and we were sailing through the Bermuda Triangle, and we could just make out Bermuda on the horizon. It was this dark black cloud with lightning bolts coming out of it. And there's a sailing race that's finishing in Bermuda, and I don't know what was going on, but they were having all sorts of emergencies. People were having to be rescued. The Bermuda Coast Guard they couldn't keep up with it, so they're sending the boats that had finished back out to rescue the other boats. And yeah, they're just running around. So that was Bermuda Triangle. It seemed to live up to its reputation.
Yeah.
And actually it had its effect on us as well. If you remember the cans we bought in Namibia, they had been fermenting inside the cans. And right about this point, I was lying in my bunk, and I heard an explosion, and another explosion, and a foul smell coming up from under the bunk, and every one of our cans exploded, and it was oozing this fermented bean goo onto the floor up through the vents.
Oh my.
So that was all of our food. We had a kilogram of oats and the fish we could catch. So luckily we caught some nice big dorado, and that tied us through to Halifax.
Wow.
Yeah, by the time we got to Halifax, it had been 54 days without seeing land.
54 days.
So we got to Halifax, and I called up Canadian Customs to clear in, and they didn't believe we'd actually come all the way from St. Helena. They figured it's impossible, we must have come from the US somewhere. And yeah, we got the boat hauled out, and new bottom paint, fixed it up. Parents met us up there, and we got them to help us scrub the bottom. That's quite good. So yeah, as seemed to work out with us, our cousin had a car in Ontario that they needed to be brought out to BC. So we drove that out with another one of our cousins, and Billy, the teddy bear that lived on the roof. And then we spent that a while back in well, I was back in Ontario actually working as a mason, and Callum was building log homes to make money for the next leg. And my parents bought this 1979 VW bus, so when it was time to head back out, we drove that back across the country, which was an adventure in itself, but it did make it with not too many issues. But, yeah, while we were working, we were collecting all the stuff we needed. We got a diesel heater because we didn't have any heat on the boat. We built a heat exchanger that ran off the engine, and used a fan to blow hot air through the boat. And we got some charts for the Northwest Passage, which were less useful than we thought they would be. Yeah, and we had to, for Northwest Passage, there's so limited resources along the way, and you're in the Arctic high, that you need to be able to motor at least 1,000 nautical miles. So we ditched a whole bunch of our water and replaced it with diesel jerry cans. And we figured if it came to it, we could fill up off of sea ice along the way. So this is in Newfoundland. This is about half of the supplies we brought on the boat, leaving for the Northwest Passage. Mostly canned again.
Pasta sauce.
Lots and lots of pasta and some other dried stuff, as well as a couple massive sacks of potatoes and a big bucket of salt beef. And then here we are. This is Dead Man Cove in the South Shore of Newfoundland. It's absolutely spectacular. It's similar to here. It's these big long fjords running inland, but with much fewer trees and more exposed rock. And the Bay Bulls, our parents met us there again. Spent a couple days there. Here you can see the mosquitoes we encountered in some of our anchorages. Thick.
Wow. Oh, that's brutal.
Some of the other wildlife. And then while we were going through Newfoundland, there were just hundreds and hundreds of whales. Yeah, we actually saw a great blue whale came up beside us at one point. And here's our track. So yeah, we made it all the way up to St. Lunaire on the northern end of Newfoundland, and our engine stopped working. So we decided we couldn't get it fixed there. It needed the injectors rebuilt and the injection pump rebuilt. So we sailed all the way back without an engine, and we got into Petty Harbor right near St. John's. We arrived in at about, I think it was around 2 a.m. and there's this guy sitting on the dock, and we were telling him what our problems was, and he said, we just need to go talk to this guy named White White. and he would get it sorted out. He was a really good mechanic. He learned it while he was in prison. He gave us directions on how to get to his house. But then we ended up finding another guy named Buddy Powell who helped us out. And he refused any payment. Everyone in Newfoundland was very, very
Wow.
So this is in Labrador. This is Hawks Harbor. It's an old abandoned whaling station. We spent a couple of days exploring around. I guess
Is that a mosquito net around your?
it is, yeah.
Okay.
So oh yeah, let's go back to that. That there. Yeah, so we sailed all the way back up to St. Lunaire, and we got just past St. Lunaire, and our wind vane broke.
Oh.
So you can see right here, this is our track coming back down to St. Lunaire and getting our wind vane fixed. But it seemed like there was a curse that we couldn't leave Newfoundland. And the people there, they refused any payment too. They said that anyone crazy enough to sail around the world in that boat deserved to get something free. Yeah, so around this point we started looking at ice predictions for Northwest Passage. And it was a very strange year last year. The ice in the eastern Arctic cleared up 2 weeks ahead of schedule, like when it normally does. But the western Arctic wasn't thawing at all. You can see all through here is still, that's solid ice. So we figured we'd go up to Greenland and just see what happens. So there we are in Greenland. We spent our 26th birthday crossing into Greenland. That crossing was kind of interesting because we weren't far enough north to have 24-hour daylight yet, but we don't have radar, so we couldn't see the icebergs at night. So it was like a Russian roulette. If you just try not, just hope you don't hit an iceberg, and there's not much you can do. Sometimes you'd look up at night and you'd see these like faint white spires coming up out of the ocean around you, and they're huge, like they're over 200 feet tall, a lot of them.
Wow.
So yeah, this is we cleared into Greenland in Sisimiut, and then spent a couple of days there before going up to Biscoe Bay and the Lulasat Ice Fjord. So there we are in front of the ice fjord with some pretty big icebergs. And we practiced sailing through the ice a little bit. These are all icebergs, like those aren't islands or anything. They're very, very large. So we figured that would be good practice for once we get farther north. So then from there, well actually I guess, so we had to clear out of Greenland, and we just went into the RCMP office to do it, or the police office to do it. And I guess they weren't used to people clearing out. They didn't think they had a stamp, and then turned out they did, but the stamp was so old it didn't work, so they took our passports upstairs and we just heard like stamp, stamp, stamp.
Oh.
We probably wouldn't have any passport pages left of us, right? But it turned out their stamp was just not broken in and they had to get it working. So then we left Greenland and crossing Baffin Bay. Dead calm pretty much. We had to motor the whole way across. And we were about halfway across and we got a message from our distant cousin who, his brother was working on this boat as the ice pilot. And they sailed within 5 miles from us. So right in the middle of Baffin Bay we had a distant cousin who was right there with us. So then, this is our first stop back in Canada, Baffin Island. It has to be one of the most impressive places in the world I've ever been. Yeah. So we spent a couple days anchored there. We were anchored just behind me here, right next to that cliff. But you'll get an idea later on, the boat would only go about, maybe not even that high on the cliff. Yeah, so we took the dinghy across to look at an ice cave, and the wind picked up while we were on the other side and got very wet coming back. The water temperature there is between 2 and -1 degrees Celsius, so it's cold. And here's where we tied up. We just tied up to the cliff. It was too deep to anchor, but yeah, we just tied our ropes on. We could climb up the cliff, and there's a lake up over there we climbed up to. So this photo gives some sort of perspective on the scale. It's so massive, even when you're there, it's hard to imagine just how big it is. So this little white speck, that's our boat. And the top of Mount Maxwell is somewhere around here. And this is all a vertical cliff. So from there, here's this is Samford Fjord where we were. And we left there and sailed up around to Pond Inlet. We had to refill and fuel at that point. And yeah, this is our route through the Northwest Passage, so you can kind of see later on where we were. So this is in Pond Inlet. It's a very small little community, almost entirely Inuit. And we have this dock here, but it's big steel. It's a big steel dock with like corrugated, so our vendors didn't do much on it. And in front of us, you can barely see it in this photo, but that's another boat that was trying to do the Northwest Passage. And they got their French boat, 34 foot, and they got to Pond Inlet and they blew their head gasket. So the boat's actually still in Pond Inlet. They got it fixed, but they're going to try to complete the passage this next summer when the ice clears again. But to get fuel in Pond Inlet, you have to go talk to the local store, and they send this tanker truck down to the dock, and they fill your boat up from that. But a strange thing is, the fuel's cheaper there than it is on Salt Spring. So this is the ice charts that we had to work with. This is Pond Inlet here, and we were trying to get up through Navy Board Inlet, and we wanted to go over to Beachy Island over here where the first of the Franklin expedition graves are. But you can see here, the green is 2/10 ice coverage, and the yellow is much thicker. And this indicates that the ice is moving south at, well, I guess that's 12 miles per day, and up here it's 10 miles per day. So we were quite worried at this point that the ice would move too far south and choke up the channel and we wouldn't be able to get out. So we made a run for it, and we did get out. But by the time we got close to on Devon Island here, we're in sight of Devon Island, and all of this ice started moving into the east. So we had to turn around. We made the decision somewhere around here to head south. And yeah, that was Prince Regent Inlet. Right after we turned south, we encountered some pretty thick ice, and at this point it was 24-hour daylight. So one of us would be up on the bow with the ice pole, that's me there, and then the other one would be steering, and it was just no sleep. Just trying to navigate through all the ice. It was also around -5 and snowing most days. So this is an aerial view of coming up to a more condensed pile of ice we had to get through. But it's kind of fun actually, and the drone really helped getting through that. But it's like a maze that's always shifting. And sometimes you'd find a lead through and you'd go through and you'd come to a dead end, but then it would close up again behind you, so then you had to find a different way to get back out again. And these things are huge, the ice sheets, so if the wind picked up in that, they would crush your boat pretty fast. And we actually had a polar bear swimming after a boat somewhere right around here. So, yeah, this is Fort Ross, and we had to spend a couple days here waiting for the ice to clear in Ballot Strait. Ballot Strait is a very, very narrow little passage, and it gets very strong tidal currents through it, very similar to the Inside Passage here, but with the added factor that you have all the ice sheets that congest in there. So when we arrived, we got a photo from a boat that had been through there that day, and the entire passage was just choked full. So the next day, we went through and we didn't see a single bit of ice. It worked out very nicely. So this is the ice chart. This is Ballot Strait here. And this is Victory Point, where the Franklin expedition left their boats and tried to head inland, overland south to escape. And yeah, so that was our goal to get there. But you can see that's, this is all solid ice. This is 9/10. Tenths, the coverage of ice is measured in tenths. So 9/10 is 90% of the ocean is covered in ice, and 2/10 is 20%. And the most we wanted to sail through was 3/10. So yeah, we ended up sailing over here and waiting for a little bit until the ice cleared enough that we could keep going south.
What's the date at this point in the trip?
It must have been late August. So this is when we did make it to King William Island and Victory Point. And this is the exact spot where the Franklin expedition came ashore in, I think it was 1847. And this is the grave of John Irving, which was one of his lieutenants, I believe. It's a it would be a depressing landscape to come ashore to. There's no vegetation whatsoever, and it's just straight rock. So, in that same spot, we hiked about 5 kilometers into the inshore, and the fog came in. And as it turns out, polar bears are very, very hard to see in the fog. But they kind of came out of the fog. We saw 2 of them about 300 meters from us. So we turned around, went back the other way, came over a ridge, and there were 2 more polar bears over the ridge that were about 70 meters from us. We backed down over the ridge and started making our way back towards the dinghy, and luckily they didn't follow us. But we carried a rifle with us just in case. So this was a very large storm that we encountered in Victoria Island. We saw it coming on the forecast, so we were able to we kind of went into an uncharted bay and anchored in there and got fairly good protection. But even so, it was the worst storm that anyone in that area had seen in 40 years. And Tuk just to the little ways to the west of us, got over 100 knots of wind. But we had very little fetch. We were quite close into shore, but we still had the waves rolling up over the deck of the boat. And at one point, it was no longer 24-hour daylight, and it must have been around 2 a.m. The chafe guard on our snubber started coming off. So I went up on the bow to get it back on, and somehow I got my finger between the anchor chain and the windlass, and I had 2 layers of padded gloves on, luckily, but I thought I wasn't going to have a finger when I pulled them off. But luckily it did stay on. It was broken though. So, from there we went over to Cambridge Bay, which is kind of the biggest town in that area. That's not all of Cambridge Bay. And in Cambridge Bay, our older brother Finn flew in and he met us to sail with us for a little bit. And we refilled on fuel there. And one of the locals saw us lugging all our jerry cans, and he had an extra truck, so he just gave us the keys and let us drive his truck around. So that was pretty good. And we met another boat doing Northwest Passage there. He was a French boat doing it solo. They all seem to be French, I don't know. He was doing it solo, and he had no satellite communication of any sort, which to me seems like an interesting idea. But we ended up sailing with him, and we would radio him every 12 hours or so with updates on weather forecasts and ice charts. Oh yeah, and also in Cambridge Bay, we met up with the Canadian Coast Guard vessel Sir Wilfrid Laurier, which we had also seen in St. John's, Newfoundland, and we would see it quite a few times, as it turned out. So then from there we went over to Tree River. It's like a very, very stunning landscape. We are far enough south now that there was actually vegetation, but yeah, polar bears were still a big concern, so we always carried the rifle with us. And this is from the French boat we met. He had been in the Caribbean before we met him, and he'd loaded up on a ton of coconuts, and that's what he was eating, so we traded some coconuts for some fish, and it must be about the first coconuts to reach that point in the Northwest Passage, I think. So from there we headed out into Amundsen Gulf, which is very shallow, and the charts don't show anything really. They have sometimes one sounding every couple miles, but they're not accurate. And yeah, it's about very, very shallow, so it's quite a challenging place. We had to keep a very close eye on our depth chart, or depth sounder there. Also, it was the most challenging spot for sea ice. So here's Tree River down here. We were going up through here, and we had to get right through all of this. So there's 2 tenths, I think that's 5 tenths, and I believe that's 7 tenths. So we got to about here, and our cousin who was on the cargo ship earlier, yeah, he works for the barge service, so he called up one of their barges that happened to be nearby and got them to send us they have fancy satellite images of the ice, which we didn't have, so that was quite helpful. And with that knowledge, we were able to stay in really close to shore, where it was too shallow for the ice. The ice would ground on the bottom, but we could make it through. So yeah, we just tucked in really close to shore and made it through. There's a couple spots where we would have to ram the ice and use the weight of, we'd ride up on top of the ice, use the weight of the boat to break through it, and then we back up and do it again. Which in a fiberglass boat is not the nicest feeling. Also going through here, we've got through past here, and we're doing about 6 knots, doing quite nicely and close to shore. I was sleeping in the bow, and just heard this resounding crunch, and we hit an iceberg at 6 knots. Like, it's not much you can do about it. You can't see them or anything. And yeah, it's a solid boat. So we were riding along. The wind blew us into the side of the iceberg, and the waves are beating us against the side of it for a little while before we get off. That was an exciting night.
Yeah.
So then we made it to Tuktoyaktuk, and our friend Ursi, she was the one that met us in Hawaii and sailed to New Zealand with us. She joined with us there, and our older brother Finn left. He had to go back to work. Again, sails were getting very old at this point, so we spent a couple hours sewing them up. And yeah, we met there's a local family that invited us over for caribou stew. That's probably the best caribou stew I've had, so it's pretty good. Oh yeah, they were also very concerned with our diet. They didn't think beans were good enough, so they gave us a bunch of whale meat, which it's very high in fat, so it's really good for the cold weather, but it's definitely an acquired taste. This is all skin, and that's the fat, so you eat it raw. You eat it raw, so it's like sort of like fish flavored chewing gum almost. So we left Tuktoyaktuk and sailed over to Herschel Island. It would be our last stop in the Canadian Arctic. And it's a abandoned whaling station. But we got there and it was blowing, it was very windy for a couple days. So we couldn't take the dinghy ashore. And we just sat at anchor and played a lot of cards. And yeah, passed the time until we could get ashore. And then we finally got ashore and there's a wood-fired sauna on the beach. Just, yeah, so we fired that up and finally got warm.
Where did the wood come from?
It washes down the Mackenzie River. It washes up on the beach. So also at Herschel Island, this is where the whaling boats in the early 1800s would anchor. And there's all the graves from the whaling ships. Then we have a video. This kind of shows our passage from Herschel Island around the top of Alaska and down to Nome. You just tap on the screen.
You've got Bluetooth if you want it. Good shot. Patch.
Yeah, missing a soundtrack.
Yeah. Megaboost? Maybe that's what we just did. Go to the bottom. Oh well.
Yeah, I like to see.
Oh, there it is.
At the bottom.
Right.
Lover. Yesterday, the wet exhaust
came off of our engine and it soaked all of the electronics on our engine, so they no longer function. All of yesterday was dead calm, and we're actually drifting in circles with absolutely spectacular northern lights. As you can see today, the conditions could not be more different. We're about 200 miles north of Nome and about 60 miles north of the Arctic Circle still. It's around 1 degree now, and with the wind chill, that's probably like -7 or -10. The netting in the bow is just caked with ice. The wind's still building, so we just took the mainsail down, and it's a lot more comfortable now. And there's just hundreds and hundreds of seabirds all around us here. On September 30th, and we just crossed back out of the Arctic Circle. Currently 8:30 a.m. local time, and we're just starting to get the first light of dawn. We're about a mile out of Nome, so we'll be in an hour or so. Start up the engine, and we seem to be able to move under our own power, so that's a very big relief. So yeah, and that we lost our transmission and our electronics for the engine. But yeah, so then we got into Nome. We'd ordered in a new clutch, which is what went in our transmission. But it was so stormy, none of the barges could get through. Actually, when we got into Nome, they were mapping the whole town with a drone, so they could have before and after footage because they're expecting so much devastation. So here, you can see there's this is just after the storm, or during the storm. There's a 9-foot storm surge. So this is a dry dock along here. That's a road. And this boat is on the hard, and they're all underwater. Yeah, so in Nome, we couldn't get that working. We couldn't get a new clutch. So we took our transmission apart, and we took the reverse clutch off and put it on the forward side. So we had forward gear, but not reverse. And that got us until we could get a new one. There's some of the locals in Nome. So leaving Nome, there's Nome. We had 600 miles to get down to the Aleutians, and we had a 6-day weather window before it was forecast to have over 100 knots coming through here. So we went for it as fast as we could. This is all very, very shallow, which is why it gets so rough. In here is actually too shallow to sail through between this island and the mainland. So we did make it. You can see it was quite a rough crossing. And yeah, we just made it down to the Aleutians, and the wind picked up, so we were just in time. And we got through the Aleutians and came into this anchorage in False Pass, and there's a hot spring there, so we went and sat in the hot spring, and a Kodiak bear came wandering along. And yeah, it was pretty close to us, but it was kind of not too interested. I guess was waiting till we were a little more cooked before. And yeah, then also hiking back to the boat, we saw a herd of caribou. So it was a very nice place. And yeah, there's some of the scenery coming down through the Alaskan Peninsula. It kind of felt like the promised land after the rough Arctic. There's lots of anchorages, and it was a lot warmer. It was probably about 0 to 5 degrees at this point. And yeah, it's very, very impressive scenery, but also very rough conditions. We had 40 to 50 knots most days, and usually we'd have to put down 2 anchors. So yeah, the nice warm conditions weren't so warm after all. It's going through in a blizzard. And yeah, there's some more just very impressive scenery. So this is just before we got to Homer. I think that's the lowest I've ever seen the barometer go.
Yeah.
And we saw that. We tucked into a little anchorage, which was just as well, because it picked up to 76 knots. And we had forgot to take the dinghy, tie the dinghy down properly. It was just floating behind the boat, tied on. And it was flying like a kite. It was fully out of the water. You can see the waves just in the anchorage there.
Wow.
So here's Homer. This is where we got our new clutch in, and we were able to finally have reverse gear again. Didn't stick around too long. It cost $100 a day at the dock.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's coming out of Homer. We had some very, very rough conditions. This the video showing some of the aftermath. We had some really nasty weather coming out of Homer. We actually got the boat up to 60.5 knots. But in the process, we broke a lot of stuff. Had our mainsail zippered off the mast and broke a bunch of slides. So what we've done is cut the bottom part off the slide and narrow the neck so it fits in. And then for the other ones, we've taken off every second intermediate slide that we have left, and we're going to sew them back on. So it might be a low wind sail, but at least we'll have a sail.
We also this broke off the bank, and also the shackle holding the main sheet snapped off. Luckily it was backed up, so that's okay for now.
Well, it's a bit of carnage on board the boat right now. Our engine started hunting, and then it lost all power. So we went through a whole pile of stuff. We changed all the filters, we checked the hoses, we drained all the fuel out of the day tank and replaced it from a jerry can. None of that worked. So we just replaced the fuel injectors. And that did work, but now it's making a bad noise. Now we've realized that one of our hoses was actually loose and leaking from the high pressure hoses, leaking diesel. So I'm cleaning that up and tightening it down now.
And hopefully that fixes it.
Leaving Homer, it was at night and it was snowing and we had snow building up on the decks and on our backs, and it was wind against current again, so it was big waves sweeping over on the beam too, so sweeping over the side of the boat. That's what caused all the damage. Yeah, and I didn't think it was actually possible to get that boat up to 16 and a half knots. So we got into the inside passage at this point up in Alaska, and this was a tiny little town called Pelican that we stopped in. We had some very heavy snow there. And we figured now we were finally in the inside passage, we could relax, everything was going to be easy after this.
And what month is it, or what's the date now?
That would have been in early December. So yeah, we got through to Canada no problem, and then we were up near Clemtu, which is a tiny little town, and we were motoring along and we heard this pop and we lost all power. And after a bit of investigation, we realized that our prop shaft had snapped right clean in half. So there wasn't much we could do about that. So we put up our sails and we started sailing over towards Bella Bella, which was about 70 miles away. And it was very strong headwinds, and it took us about, I think it was 2 days to do 70 miles, 2-hour shifts. Yeah, and 2-hour shifts, strong winds, snowing. And yeah, on the way, just as we were getting probably about halfway there, we snapped our shroud. It was very, very strong winds. I think that was probably one of the most challenging 48 hours of the entire trip. So yeah, we got to Bella Bella and we were able to haul the boat out, but we needed to have a prop shaft custom made for us, so that was taking a while, especially with it being Christmas. So we ended up taking the ferry back here, and we spent Christmas on Salt Spring, which was very nice actually.
How did you fix, I mean, a broken shroud, right? How did that?
We replaced it with a Dyneema one,
Yeah.
and that's got us this far.
Right.
So yeah, once we got back after Christmas, had everything working, and we started cruising back down the coast. We stopped in Ocean Falls, which is an old abandoned town. Still got the high rises and everything there. And then this is another one that we stopped in. This is the old cannery, Namu. And in the store there, it was just abandoned, and in the store, all the shelves are still stocked and everything is still there. This was this is on Vancouver Island. And, it was quite snowy coming down. And this is us arrived back here on Salt Spring.
How long did it take you?
The entire trip was 3.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's all of that.
I'm exhausted.
So what are you gonna do now?
Well, that's the question. We'll have to figure that out. First step is make money. Yeah.
When did you get back?
When did we get back? It was not too long ago. No, it was
It was a month ago.
It was like, yeah, March.
Yeah.
yeah. It was quite recently.
It's a blur.
Yeah.
About climate change and you guys going through all this, did you have any sense of that? I know you don't have a comparison, I guess, but did that come up in your trip, the thought of it?
Definitely all throughout our trip, yeah. In Fiji, all those southern islands we were going to, the towns are starting to flood because of rising sea levels. So I believe they have, it's like 100 towns they've marked out as at high risk that they're working on moving. And one town we went into, every month, they all have to go down and collect sandbags and put them up around the town. Otherwise it'll flood. They have raised pathways now between all the houses because the water does come right up between the houses. And then up in the Arctic, we saw a lot of glaciers, and you could see where the glaciers had been, all the rocks pushed aside, and then the glacier was way down away from that. It receded so much. And then even with the weather patterns too, like before you could quite consistently judge what would happen based on previous years, but more recently it's been much more erratic.
Would you do another trip anywhere? Do you have a more ambition to go places you haven't seen yet?
I would like to go back to the Arctic and see more of that. Because it's such a short weather window and such a massive area, we only got to see a tiny little bit of it. So that would be the main thing I'd like to do, I think.
So in your did you take any oils or fats with you?
We had coconut oil, and we had a lot of ghee. Yeah, we had ghee.
Oh.
And then we had whale fat, I guess, after.
Yeah.
When you're navigating through the ice, were there any polar bears around on the ice that would come near you?
We didn't actually see any on the ice, but we did have a couple swimming around. One of them came quite close to the boat. They're following us for hours. There's another boat. They were just ahead of us, and they had a polar bear climb up on top of their boat and rip their life raft apart.
Wow.
It would be exciting.
Did they have a sugar scoop?
Did you have any rituals or superstitions that developed after so much time on board together?
Definitely bananas. Yeah, we heard their bad luck, and then it seemed like it was reinforced for us.
You proved it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was the only one, though. There are other things. We were very strict about no whistling on the boat. It brings bad weather. And, I don't think we're actually serious about it. Well, we would not allow bananas on the boat. No strict rule.
Were you following the world news, or were you quite happy to be in a world of your own?
We were not following the world news at all, really. So yeah, it was kind of nice.
Yeah.
But then you get into town, you hear everything that happened. Yeah.
What kind of comms did you have? Did you any satellite communication, like talking and stuff like that? Did you have satellite phone or anything?
We did have, so we had a Iridium Go, and that allowed text and email and weather downloading. It took about anywhere from 2 to 4 hours to download our weather charts. We could also call through it, but it would have cost $3 a minute, so we never did that. And then once we got in the Northwest Passage, we got a Starlink so that we could download ice charts faster.
Starlink.
Yeah, just a remarkable voyage, and your grit and determination. I mean, just to overcome some of these obstacles that you face throughout, with good humor and you know, and it just goes to show you. So many people, I've done it offshore. A lot of people in this room probably have, and you kind of sit in port and you wait for the weather window and you wait for till your water makers working and all this stuff, right? But you guys just went and did it. And, yeah, that's a really admirable thing. And youth is part of it, but it's also you know, attitude. It's about attitude. And it's so impressive, really, really impressive.
I think maybe a bit of ignorance.
Well, based on that, what would you do different? Like, or what have you learned to do the next time? Or
I would bring a roller furling head sail. That's one thing. Yeah, and I think I would, if I had the money, I would get a water maker, but I wouldn't want to rely on it.
Yeah.
So I'd have enough extra water.
Maybe a Dodger and some cushions?
Definitely a Dodger, yeah.
What about food choices? Could you, I mean, obviously not the Namibian beans, but, you know, other choices that you made, did they suit you all the way through?
I mean, yeah, they worked well enough, and with our budget, that was what we could do. It would be very nice to have a fridge and freezer, but it's also just one more thing to break and to maintain.
Yeah.
So I think probably doing it again, I probably wouldn't bring one, like just what I was saying. I probably wouldn't do as long offshore passages if I was doing it again.
if you're going up to the Arctic, would you consider a steel boat, or would you?
I would definitely consider a steel boat, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
It's pretty cool that you can actually see the iceberg marks on your boat now.
Yeah.
It's really very cool.
It looks pretty beat up.
I wonder, you had a wind vane for power and also a solar panel. How did they work? It seems like solar is getting so much cheaper nowadays, but wind isn't really. Would you have done a different ratio or something, or?
No, it worked quite well for us because we didn't have any refrigeration or anything. We consumed very little power. So we had a 120 watt solar panel and a 400 watt wind turbine, which we bought from Canadian Tire for $400. And
there you go.
Between them, they produced all the energy we needed. If it was sunny, we get wind.
Yeah, it was a really good combination. Yeah, because when it's sunny, then you're getting that, but if it's not sunny, it's very likely windy, so then you'll be getting the wind turbine power.
Yeah.
That's good.
Wow.
Did you have an auto helm of any kind? Or you guys all did the other?
We had our mechanical wind vane, which it worked really well offshore. That's one thing I would not go offshore without. And then we had a electric tiller pilot, and we went through several of those. We needed them for Northwest Passage when we were motoring. And also with the
last long, we got about halfway through Northwest Passage and it failed, so then we were just hand steering after that.
The other thing with Northwest Passage is it's so close to the North Pole that the magnetic deviance variance is way off, and any sort of compass, including a electric tiller pilot, doesn't work.
So with the drone, you were able to navigate in real time, just through video?
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
Live feed the video back to your phone.
Oh, amazing.
It was very helpful in finding what it's through.
Anything else? You can probably let these guys go.
Oh, did you get any sponsors? Besides your parents and great people in Newfoundland and whatever?
So we had Patreon for a little while, and we got some money in through that. And then in Nova Scotia, when we had all our engine issues, that set our budget back a lot, and we had quite a few people donate, which really helped out. Yeah, so that was very helpful.
Have you still got your Patreon running?
No, stop that.
Done.
Awesome.
Oh, cool, that was amazing.
Well, I'm speechless. I'm just I'm so happy, for Salt Spring, to have somehow spawned these really, really amazing people. And I'm just really, pleased that I got a chance to hang around with them for a while and see what they've done. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what happens in the future, because I don't think it'll be boring.
You make it look easy, guys, but I'm not gonna try it anymore.
I'd just like to say thank you very much for sharing with us, because you didn't have to, and you did. I really appreciate it. It was fascinating.
Okay, you don't have to put your chairs back or anything?
I know.
It's such a lazy slug.
No ambition. The negative. When you were a third grade, right, I can do now. Give yourself a break. But yeah, I do feel that.
Yes, we were in the 20s. Yes, we were once.
Have a good night.
Yes, you too.
Yes, you too.
Well, I took a picture about 45 minutes.